All right, hello there, world history students. Welcome to my final video about imperialism in Africa. I'm just going to kind of talk about some other events that occurred during this time period in the African continent. A dude that you really should know about is Shaka Zulu. Shaka Zulu is one of the best warrior commanders who ever lived. He was the leader of the Zulu tribe in South Africa, and he's one of the few people who successfully resisted European imperialism for a time. He united the Bantu people of southern Africa through war and conflict, and he never really had access to guns or machine guns or any of this industrial stuff, but he used some really smart tactics and employed these really awesome spear warriors to defeat the British Empire on a couple of occasions. Sadly, the Zulus did not maintain their independence because through treachery, the British bribed his brother and killed Shaka in his sleep. And after that, the Zulu Empire kind of fell apart, and Europeans took over the whole thing. But his life story is pretty interesting if you want to know about a strong African leader who fought back. So let's check it out. Oh, come on. All right, here they are doing some plows and stuff. Here's Shaka Zulu arming himself with his traditional weapons. Here are the Impi warriors fighting it out against the British. And this is roughly where the Zulu lands were in southern Africa. And they are charging it up and fighting out against the British. Okay, and here's some important things to know. So the Battle of Amderman was a pretty interesting moment in the history of the world. It was really a telling battle. So this happened in the modern-day country of Sudan, and there were these 8,000 British warriors who were supposed to take over the country of Sudan. Well, the Sudanese king got 60,000 warriors together and said, okay, we outnumber these British almost 10 to 1. Let's fight them on the open field. The British saw them coming. They set up their machine guns. They set up their rifles. They got on this kind of big hill. And as the king of the Sudanese told his men to charge up to fight the British, his men were just repeatedly cut down by machine guns and rifles. At the end of the battle, the British only lost 47 guys, and the Sudanese lost 25,000 guys. He just had this realization, and really the world had this realization, that you cannot effectively fight against guns. I mean, Shaka did it a little bit in the last slide, but he surrendered his country after that, and Sudan became a colony of Britain for the next 80 years. So it's definitely an unfair world if you don't have guns. And the king of Ethiopia, which is right next to Sudan, he saw that battle happening and he said, oh, hey, you know what? If Ethiopia is going to be independent, we're going to need guns too. So Menelik, because his whole country's Christian, he made some connections with some other Christian countries who got some deals made with Russia. Russia sent Ethiopia some rifles and some machine guns. And so when the Italians tried to invade Ethiopia, Menelik successfully fought them back, and he kept Ethiopia independent for another 50 years or so. So that's pretty awesome, Menelik. Good job. All right. So, yep, there's Menelik II leading the Ethiopians in a battle, and the reason why they won, it had everything to do with military technology and nothing to do with Europeans thinking they were somehow better. So here they are fighting it out in some of these battles, fighting it out. Okay, so by 1910, only 2 African countries were independent. The country of Liberia, which was founded by former slaves from the United States, it kind of had protection from America, and the country of Ethiopia, who preserved its independence by modernizing and having daring leadership, and they had guns, as I said in the last slide. So those are the only 2 parts of Africa that escaped the age of imperialism. But over the course of history, Ethiopia is going to get invaded by Italy again, and next time Italy's going to win. Liberia maybe never was properly invaded, but Liberia has problems later in history as well. Okay, so does today's Africa still suffer from the legacies of imperialism and even the legacies of slavery? They kind of went hand in hand with each other. So you can see here that there's this vibe that Africa has lost all of its mineral wealth. It got sent to North America and Europe, and that there's a bunch of people living in poverty in Africa. It really sucks. And then there's kids who are starving. Okay, and now I think that a lot of this really just comes down to that Africa never really had the chance to create their own nation states like other countries in the world did. They got imperialized to this incredible degree by Europeans. The Europeans more or less made their borders for them, and a lot of these borders don't have a relationship to the cultures that live there. Like, let's look at Algeria, for example. The French took over Algeria, and this is the country of Algeria today, but Algeria has like 4 different cultural groups in it, maybe 5 different cultural groups. So it would just make way more sense if Africa's borders were drawn along these cultural lines rather than these European lines as they are today. And actually, see, this map's even a little old because Sudan today has now been split in half to sort of better reflect the different cultures in Sudan. So yeah, today's borders in Africa, all based on European conquests. It's really messed up. Okay. And then here's just another sad thing too. There's a lot of conflict on the continent of Africa today. A lot of those conflicts are based on tribal conflicts that were fought for 1,000 years, or fought 1,000 years ago. But now a lot of Africa have automatic weapons. They have big, dangerous militaries. Makes these conflicts far more deadly. In the last 30 years, the majority of deaths from war in our world all occurred in Africa. So, yep, here's some African warlord guys. They got guns everywhere, and it's really, really rough. Okay, and this is the other thing, too, that I'll say about Africa. So, even though the age of imperialism is now over, and that Europeans have kind of removed themselves from direct control over Africa, there still is the resource extraction and the whole vibe of let's send our mineral wealth and our resources to European countries and they will profit more. And it's not because Europe has direct control, it's that there's a lot of really bad governments in Africa. And so some of these European companies, they make deals with African leaders and they say, hey, if you just keep sending us your diamonds, we'll send you a ton of money. And the thought process is, well, maybe that leader will share the money with the people they're responsible for, but it's more and more common that those leaders just take the money for themselves and don't share it with their people. I know a big concept is that because there are all those different ethnic groups and those different tribes that live in many of these modern countries today, the leader will give that money to their own tribe and maybe neglect some of the tribes that are their enemies. And it just promotes more division and more civil war. And yeah, there's a lot of abuse and mismanagement of Africa. My sister has lived in Uganda for the last 8 years, maybe longer. And she has a lot of personal stories about seeing this with her own eyes. She's met a lot of great people in Africa, some of her best friends, but the governments are generally not good, honest people to work with. So, officer, I told you we have no funding for police operations. Okay, so this leader, where's all the money? It's under his desk. He's keeping it for himself. Okay, people try to give money to help people in Africa, and a lot of that money just gets held up by the leaders. And here's the house of Jacob Zuma. He was the former leader of South Africa. You can see his house has 2 waterfalls. That's some next level stuff. Okay, now let's talk about Black Hawk Down. So I'm just going to talk this one out. So Black Hawk Down was an event that happened in 1991, and I'll give you the whole context of it. Wait, was it 1991 or was it 1993? 1990s. Okay, so the country of Somalia was having a terrible drought. And there was this famine going on. They couldn't grow any food. A lot of the people of Somalia traditionally were cattle herders. And there was no rain coming from the sky. So a lot of people were starving to death. It was really bad. And they called on the world for help. And so the United States of America said, you know what? We're going to send the people of Somalia some food. So we just sent tons and tons of food into the port of Mogadishu, and we were spreading the food around. The people were eating. No one was dying. It looked pretty great. But, so yeah, here's some more people eating this aid food. No one's going to die. But the problem is, in these jerk terrorist guys, I think, was it Al-Shabaab? I'm going to stand by that. So these terrorist guys showed up and said, you know what? We're going to take over all this food distribution. And the only way people are going to get food is if they pay us money, if they join our ranks, if they join our special version of Islam that says, we fight everybody who doesn't believe in us. And so they kind of took advantage of the desperation of the people, and they stole all this American food aid. That's pretty rude. So here they are just kind of abusing people, and here they are just taking over more and more. And so the United States was like, you know what, we can't let these guys steal all this food aid. We can't let them just bully the people of Somalia. So President Clinton decided to send in the U.S. Army to take out the leaders of this organization. So we sent in this military detachment of a bunch of guys in these Black Hawk helicopters. They flew into the city of Mogadishu. We found out the building where a lot of the leaders were held up, and our objective was to capture those guys and to send them to prison. Well, things didn't work out that way, because a lot of those hardcore terrorist dudes, they had heavy machine guns, they had rocket launchers, and they blew up our helicopters, and they ended up killing many U.S. soldiers. So it's like the U.S. was just there to try to help people, to try to send them food aid. And in the end, they fought us because they wanted to oppress their people with the food aid. And after the event in the 1990s, the United States has been far more reluctant to send direct help to Africa anymore. It's really sad. Okay, that's it for me. Peace out.